I'm going to talk about three key things. The first thing I'm going to talk about is what is a personal brand. The second thing is whether you should build a personal brand. And the third thing is if we're going to build a personal brand, how do we do it? If you have a strong personal brand, people know you outside of your industry. If you follow the Futur, you might have heard a recent episode that I did with Chris Do. Chris's perspective is that a personal brand is an exploration of who you are. I was having dinner with another one of my friends last night called James Martin. He doesn't think that you can build an authentic brand. Like, he thinks that authenticity and brand are like polar opposites. So should you build one? If your goal is simply to build a successful business that gives you freedom, that gives you financial stability, then welcome to the Creative Courage Podcast. My name is Matt Essam. If you're new here, this podcast is all about exploring what it takes to build a creative business that gives you freedom, fulfillment, and financial security. Today, I want to talk to you about personal branding. Not because I'm a personal branding expert by any means, but because I've been having a lot of conversations about personal branding recently. If you follow the Futur and you listen to their podcast, you might have heard a recent episode that I did with Chris Do, where we discussed personal branding. And the episode really was about me giving my concerns and thoughts about personal branding, and Chris teaching me ultimately what he thought personal branding was and why he thought it was a worthwhile pursuit. And so this is kind of a little bit like a behind the scenes episode, I suppose. I want to share a few key insights and principles with you around personal branding and share a little bit about my journey, because as I said, I'm not an expert in this. This is very much a journey that I'm going on myself and something that I want to explore with you, because I think it's a hot topic right now. And also I think it is quite relevant to a lot of founders that listen to this podcast. So I'm going to talk about three key things. The first thing I'm going to talk about is like, what is a personal brand from my perception, and how is it different from maybe what I thought it was before? The second thing is whether you should actually build a personal brand or not. Is it worth your while? And the third thing is, if we're going to build a personal brand, what does that actually involve and how do we do it? So the conversation between Chris and I went in a way that I didn't quite expect. And we've actually recorded 2 episodes now. And I think the first one was about 90 minutes and the second one was almost 2 hours. So if you do want to go and listen to that, you want to kind of dive in and hear a little bit behind, a little bit of the actual podcast rather than behind the scenes, then that's a kind of great place to start. If you don't know the Futur and you don't know Chris, literally just Google the Futur without an E and Chris Do and you'll find it. But I was basically saying to Chris that I don't like this idea of having to be quote unquote famous in order to have a successful business. And Chris basically said to me, you don't. There are loads of people with very successful businesses financially, from a fulfillment perspective, that don't really have a personal brand or don't have a big personal brand. And so I said, well, what's the point then? What's the point? Why do people keep talking about it? And Chris's argument was that a lot of what people talk about online isn't really what a personal brand is. And Chris's perspective is that a personal brand is really about an exploration of who you are, and that journey of building a personal brand and sharing your ideas, sharing your world with other people is really about becoming more of your authentic self and becoming more of who you are. And now Chris obviously is a very good teacher, and a lot of his content gets traction online because he has an incredible way of explaining things. And the second episode that we recorded kind of explored this. It explored this idea of really building a personal brand is about being able to communicate better with people. It's about expressing these ideas in a unique way through your lens, through your world, and essentially uncovering more of who you are. And Chris shared this quote with me that I didn't quite get at first because it's quite complicated in terms of its sentence structure. But when I did understand it, it made a lot of sense. And the quote that I think he came up with is, the more you are, the more you are. So the more you are, the more you are. And basically his perception of personal brand is about authenticity and it's about learning to communicate and teach in a way that really aligns with, I guess, your personality and your way of doing things. So that's the first kind of concept of like what I thought a personal brand was basically like having a big social media following and, you know, putting yourself out there all the time. And I think the like challenge I have with it, or the thing that really I don't agree with or that doesn't sit right for me, are these people who just seem to share everything online, from what breakfast they're having to, you know, where they're going on holiday, and their Instagram is filled with these kind of manipulated and slightly false perceptions of what life is. And I think it's like really dangerous in a lot of ways, in the sense that I think it can create like mental health challenges for people, because they think that that's how life is supposed to be, because they're comparing someone's highlight reel to their behind the scenes. And they think that every day should look like that. And if it doesn't, their life is broken in some way. And I think that's like a really dangerous perspective to have. And so I had this kind of like anti-personal brand, I guess, in my mind. And we kind of had this debate with Chris. And this idea of like building an audience and what people do to build an audience and what people do to get famous. And this isn't even just in the world of social media. It's even before social media. We had reality TV, and people would go on shows like Big Brother or Love Island or whatever it was, basically just to be famous, just because they wanted a camera on them and they were so kind of self-obsessed and they wanted to be famous. And like that was, I remember hearing someone, I think it was like Ricky Gervais or another comedian or someone, saying that they heard this study or this survey where they were talking to young people and asking them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And their answer was, I want to be famous. Like, and to me, that's so toxic, and that's such a toxic way of looking at personal branding and business in general, right? Like, I don't think I would care if I didn't have a business. If I just had like a 9-to-5 job, personal branding wouldn't even be on my radar. It's only really a thing for me personally because I want to impact more people. I want to feel like my business has purpose. I want to feel like the content I'm putting out reaches people and helps people, even if they never pay me any money. And we get the opportunity to do that now. We get the opportunity to do things like this, where I'm literally talking to you and you could be listening to this anywhere in the world. And it's like we're having this conversation like I'm sat in your living room or wherever or your car, wherever you're listening to this, right? Obviously, it's not a two-way conversation, but it's my way of exploring these ideas and maybe getting you to think a little bit differently about your business and your life and the things that you're doing. And that's ultimately why I do this and why I do this podcast, right? But I hear a lot, just like you probably do, that having a personal brand is so important. And so I've started to go on this journey, and I'm doing it with Chris because A, he's a friend, but B, he obviously has a very well-known personal brand. You're probably listening to this and you know who he is. Maybe you even discovered this podcast and me through Chris, because a lot of my content is on their channel. So I do find it fascinating, and I do look at people who have personal brands and big audiences and things like that are able to attract opportunities. And so just going back to my first point is like, you know, what actually is a personal brand? Chris defines it in this way. And I think he's got 3 definitions in the latest podcast that we looked at. The first one is that if you have a strong personal brand, you are famous, or people know you outside of your industry. Right. So it's like Banksy, for example, is an artist, but my mum's heard of Banksy. Banksy is an artist, but also has a reputation in other industries, maybe like the finance industry or whatever, because of the value of his paintings and things like that. So I think the first thing is that you're like known outside of your vertical. The second thing is your ability to add value to a product or service just based on your name or on your brand. So for example, when celebrities put their name on an alcohol, all of a sudden that alcohol becomes exponentially more valuable. Or like Michael Jordan puts his name on a pair of trainers, those trainers are like more valuable, right? Because they're Jordans. So that's the second thing that he talks about. The third thing I might get slightly wrong, because I'm just doing this from memory, but it's ultimately, he says it's about the ability to attract opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise attracted, right? So it's like people coming to you rather than you going to them. And so we talked about this idea of like brand and personal brand versus just being well known in your industry. And I said to Chris, like, I think a lot of creatives just want to be the go-to agency or whatever in their industry. I don't think they want a brand that is so big that when they put their name on it, it increases the value of the particular thing. Like when he described all the benefits or all the things that, hey, this is when you've got a strong brand or a strong personal brand. I was like, I don't know a lot of people have aspirations for those things. So then we explored like the process of personal brand and what it actually gives you and your ability to create impact in the world and in your business. And then that started to feel a little bit more aligned to me. So that kind of brings us to the second point, which is, should you build a personal brand? Is it even worth building a personal brand? And it was interesting because I was having dinner with another one of my friends last night called James Martin. You might know James. His brand is called Made by James. He's on Instagram. He's an illustrator. He's one of the, I think, directors now of Lincoln Co. Design. He's on the board of Canva. So he's like very immersed in brand. He's very immersed in design. And he kind of disagreed a little bit with Chris's point of view, which was that he doesn't think that you can build an authentic brand. Like he thinks that authenticity and brand are like polar opposites. And I guess that's one of the things that I was afraid of or was aware of when I was talking to Chris, was that like, I don't want to manufacture this version of myself. And James says that is what personal branding is. It's like manufacturing a version of yourself that you want to be or that you want people to perceive you as. And something about that doesn't quite sit right with me. And the other thing he talks about is building a personal brand that's kind of in alignment with what you want and how you want people to see you. And so that's kind of how I feel when it comes to this like whole personal branding thing. It's kind of how I feel. It feels a little bit like this is how I want the world to see me, right? I'm trying to manufacture this personal brand, this way of people seeing me in the world, which is very different to Chris's opinion. So one of the things I said to James is like, I need to get you guys in a room. I hope next year. I mean, let me know either in the comments of this podcast or connect with me on LinkedIn if you listen to this episode and let me know what you think. If that would be something that you would watch or listen to, is like Chris Do and James Martin in a room debating about personal branding and what a personal brand is. So should you build one? And you might not like the answer to this, but I think if your goal is simply to build a successful business that gives you freedom, that gives you financial stability, that gives you fulfillment from the work that you do, then like, I don't know that a personal brand is essential. I think what's essential is that you know your audience really well. You know your target client really well. Like who is your dream client? Who do you want more of? What are they struggling with right now? Like what are the problems and the challenges they have? What are they trying to get more of? Like what's front of their mind? What are their desires? And then obviously your work has to be really good and you have to build an incredible reputation just around the problems you solve and the quality of the work that you do. I recorded a podcast earlier this week with a guy called Alex Galeb, who basically designs hotels and restaurants, and he's really creative and really cool, but his projects are like sometimes multiple six figures, and he doesn't do any business development. He's been in business only for like 5 years, so obviously there's a period of time where you kind of rely on your network and things like that. But I just found it fascinating. Like his reputation really does precede him in that world, and people seek him out for opportunities. And I was kind of deconstructing and looking at what he was doing. And I think, like I said just now, a lot of creatives and a lot of people listening to this, they just want that. They just want to be like the go-to person in their industry. They want people to seek them out for their work. They want to attract their dream clients. And I don't know that having a really strong personal brand as a founder is necessary for that. really. Like, I think it probably helps, like if you have content online and you have an online presence. But from the discussions we had with Chris, that's not really what a personal brand is. It isn't just about putting content out there. It's not just about being able to connect with people. He's like, that's marketing. Right. And so he has this real distinction between this is marketing and this is personal brand. So go and listen to the episodes. I think the next one will be out soon. But yeah, my take on that is that I don't know if my audience and the creatives and even myself, really, the jury is still out. Like, I think I want to go on the journey of learning how to be a better teacher. I think I want to go on the journey of learning how to be more of myself, put more of myself out there, because I think it's important as with the work that I do and as a coach. I think it's important to be vulnerable and to be honest with people. And, you know, one of my mentors always says people don't buy coaching, they buy coaches. So I think it's important from like the industry that I'm in and the content that I create. But for a creative studio, I don't know how important it is. So the jury's still out on that one. What about actually building one? I mean, obviously I've just told you don't need to, but if you are looking to create more content and you're looking to, I guess if you're looking to build something that's much bigger than yourself, that has a much bigger impact, and those things that I said at the start, where people know you outside of your industry, where, you know, you have the ability basically to print money because as soon as you stick your name on something, it has more value. And, you know, like really the ability to kind of have more impact and, you know, really connect with people in a different way, then obviously you might be interested in building a personal brand. But how to do it? Well, you know, Chris talks about these pillars. So Chris is the person to follow in terms of that. But for me personally, what I'm really focused on is finding my USP, I guess, in the way that I teach and in the way that I communicate value and content. So one thing I notice about someone like James Martin or anyone else I follow that's got like a decent following is that they kind of found that unique style. So James does a lot of shorts where he kind of deconstructs logos and he looks at the white space between them and he kind of does these funny gestures and, you know, he really uses his personality to create the connection between the designs and what he's doing and him. And I think that really works. And then obviously Chris has got a very unique style of teaching that he does with his whiteboard sessions, which are often very popular. So I guess the way that I'm approaching it is I'm going to work with Chris and Chris is going to help me do this, but I'm going to find my kind of unique way of teaching and communicating. And that's going to be my kind of exploration of personal brand, I guess. And I actually love creating content. So I like doing this podcast. I like writing books. I mean, I don't necessarily like the process, but I like after it's finished where I'm able to get all of my ideas out. I like creating models. I like creating frameworks. That's why I'm such a big fan of people like Daniel Priestley, because I think he's so good at creating like frameworks and models. So that's kind of my exploration into personal brand. I'm honestly not that bothered. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, I need to get my Instagram to 100,000 followers or whatever. I'd like to grow my LinkedIn audience, but that's just mainly because I spend a lot of time on it. I quite like the platform. I'd like to grow this podcast. And that's, again, because of the opportunities that come with it. I'd like to interview more people. I'd like to interview maybe some more famous people or some people with stronger personal brands. I'd like it to be easier for me to get my foot in the door. And, you know, Chris says that they are all byproducts of having a strong personal brand. So I'm just exploring this with you and I guess trying to debunk a few of the myths. And my idea is to kind of share a few of these episodes behind the scenes and I guess let you know what's going on in my head, let you know what I'm doing behind the scenes, just to, I guess, bring you on this journey a little bit, bring you inside of my world and what's happening, but also maybe give you some insight into whether it's a journey that you would want to go on and what the benefits are. Because, you know, I wouldn't say I have a particularly strong personal brand, if a personal brand at all. So I think this is a good point to come into the journey to see what the next 6, 12, 18 months look like for me if I work with Chris to build a personal brand, whatever that really means, because lots of people have different definitions, but really to see what impact that can have and whether it changes anything. So yeah, I guess stay tuned. This episode was about personal branding. It was a bit of a rant, a monologue, and an exploration. And so yeah, I'm just trying a few of these episodes because, to be honest, another thing about content, just before we wrap up, Another thing about content is the formulaic nature of it gets pretty wearing to me. And I like to just talk. I like just the free flow. I like to just kind of ramble as if I'm talking to somebody in my living room or a friend or a client or whatever. And so maybe this is my style, or maybe this style works better for me in terms of content. I don't know. Maybe this is really hard to listen to. And you're like, Jesus, that had absolutely no point, that episode. Like, what did we even just talk about? Or maybe you like it. Maybe you like this inside, sat on the sofa, conversational style. For those of you that can't see me, I'm sat on the sofa. So let me know, connect with me. That's ultimately why I'm doing this podcast. I want to connect with more people. I want to reach more people, even if they never work with me. I want to spread ideas, different ways of thinking. And ultimately, my mission is to help amazingly talented creatives like you to build businesses that really give them that sense of freedom, that fulfillment from the work that they do, that impact and that purpose, and ultimately as well, the financial stability or the financial abundance, because we all need to pay the bills and it feels good to get paid for work that you love. If you enjoyed this episode, you know what I'm going to ask you to do? Please hit that subscribe button and share it with a friend. This is Creative Courage. My name is Matt Essen.